Good morning. Welcome to another week, and what a great thing it is to be able to be a part of God's work. And whatever burdens, whatever difficulties we've got, it's so good to know that we can fall back, if you want to use that term, or we can rely on the fact that God is a part of our lives. He knows what's going on. He said, "No weapon that's formed against you shall prosper." It didn't mean there won't be weapons formed against us. Jesus said, "In the world you'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I'll overcome the world." So there will be tribulation, but He's going to be with us, and He'll be near to us. And I just want to encourage you, keep praying for your country, for your state, for your church, for your family. And God's so good to us. I was just thinking about the last few, about our country. I love our country, and just thinking the businesses. If you go back 4 years, the businesses, you go to a restaurant. I was at a restaurant the other day, and I thanked the guy. I said, because service was good, and help was good, and I said, I really appreciate it. I said, I know it's not easy days for you. He said we had to close part of our business. It was they had a drive-through, mainly a sit-down place, but they had a drive-through. He said we had to close the drive-through because I couldn't get enough cashiers in. And that's all over. You go to, from the grocery store to the hardware store, the help is, these are great days for people to get a start, because anybody can get a job. And you know what? You go back 4 years ago, the standard of employees was up here, and businesses were booming, and good jobs, and good employees, and the customer service was good. Just the number of things that have changed under a new administration, under a liberal slant to our country, it's just terrible what's happened in our nation. But that's just one of many things that have changed. Of course, the cost of living has skyrocketed, and the business owners are struggling, and just struggling to get employees, and struggling to pay bills and take care of taxes and all the legal things. To own a business is not an easy thing, especially in California. But God's in charge, and He knows what's going on. I would urge you, pray for your country and walk with God. If you're not faithfully attending a church, get in one. Now, I understand some of you are sick or whatever, you don't get out anywhere. But I remember one day I was at the grocery store. I ran into a guy I hadn't seen for some time, and I said, "Wow, it's sure good to see you." He said, "Well, my wife and I were just too sick to get out." And we're there standing in the grocery store. And I know it could have been, we can get to the grocery store, walk around with the cart and walk out, but we can't sit for an hour or whatever. I don't know. I didn't ask. But, you know what, church? America needs its Christians in their Bible, in prayer, and in church. America needs its Christians living holy lives and going out talking about Christ. But anyway, I want to just throw out a verse or two for you. Most of us are familiar with the 10 Commandments. Although we probably couldn't quote them. Most people couldn't quote all 10 of them, but we get 7, 8, 9 of them sometimes. But just a couple of chapters later, see, those commandments keep going. The 10 were the main ones that were written down on the tables of stone. But God gave Moses a whole lot, hundreds. The Old Testament law was overwhelming, the number of commandments. But I want to take you over to Exodus chapter 23. And point out a verse that most people either skim over or don't think about. But let me just read a couple verses. Exodus 23, verse 1 and 2. "Thou shalt not raise a false report." So first of all, don't even bring up a false report, good or bad. And I would say in our world today, don't do it online. Don't you bring up something that's not true. And that'd change the whole world right there. But then he goes on. "Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness." So here we got some bad people who are saying this thing, and don't put your hand to it. Don't join them in their false witnesses. Don't do it. Then in verse 2, "Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil." Now that's important. What we're looking at is the multitude. Don't follow a multitude to do evil. And we get this idea, if everybody thinks that it must be right or the majority's right, we know better than that. But it really does, it draws us. And I remember a situation, and there was a little discussion with me and somebody about the right of a situation, and they said, "Did you see how many views it had on social media?" And I thought, that just means it was exciting to watch or it was promoted. That doesn't mean it's true. The number of people saying something does not mean it's true. And that's why in America we have this constitutional republic where the Constitution and the laws protect the minority from having their freedoms taken away by the majority. And the majority's not gonna, and that's like the Electoral College protects the city as well as the country. And that's why the various setups of the House of Representatives, the Congress, the way those votes are spread out, 2 per state, regardless of the size of the state, and then the number of representatives according to the population. Our founders were brilliant in setting up an organization that would protect the farmer in Montana and the factory worker in Pittsburgh. And it's not perfect because people are involved, but it's the best thing in the world's ever seen. But the majority, they're not always right. He says right there in verse 2, he says, "Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment." Don't you let your voice go decline in a cause with many. The 2 words there, multitude and many, that's 2 words I want to talk about just for a minute or 2 this morning as we think about these things. And I just scribbled a couple of notes about this. Just think for a minute of the disciples. There's 12 of them. One of them betrayed the Lord and hung himself. So we got 11. Jesus is arrested, and the scripture says, and this is what was prophesied that it would happen, smite the shepherd and the sheep should be scattered. And so you got 11 left. Well, they scattered. John made it into the temple area where Jesus was being tried. Peter followed a distance behind, and John knew who the girl who kept the gate, and he got Peter inside, and then Peter denied the Lord 3 times. Now, we don't know all the details, what John was doing. It doesn't say much, but he was there. So at best, 1 of the 11 remaining apostles stood true. 1 out of 11. The majority is not always right, and we've got to guard our thinking on these things. We go a little bit further, and you think about the life of Daniel. Daniel was in the minority. Think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were in the minority. Think about Noah's Ark. Certainly the minority, the 4 men, the daddy, Noah and his wife, and Shem, Ham, and Japheth and their wives, those 8 got on the ark with a bunch of animals. Nobody else got on. The majority were, we could say, dead wrong. This idea that everybody's doing it, we all know that's foolish talk, but it does influence us. And we get thinking, well, everybody's saying it doesn't make it right. And in America, in our legal system, we still pretty much have laws where you're innocent until proven guilty. Now, it's not been so much lately with the Department, with the FBI and Department of Justice and liberals in Washington. There's an awful lot of wrong being done that people are treated as if guilty. But you know what I mean. The average American, we still sort of have those rights that we're innocent until proven guilty. So if you just read something or hear something, don't assume they're guilty. You should assume they're innocent. You say, well, I'll stay undecided until it's proven. No. You should consider them innocent. That's what our law says. Our law says you're innocent until proven guilty. And we've pulled from innocent until proven guilty to, well, we'll kind of be in the middle, and you can prove them guilty or prove them innocent. You don't have to prove anybody's innocent. You have to prove they're guilty. And sadly, lawyers and social media and people all over America, their jury, judge, and executioner up in their head, and whether it be on social media or whatever, reading it in the newspaper, and we're just sure this is how it is. No facts at all. Never shook the person's hand. Don't have any idea what's going on. You think about the 12 spies. You know the kid song, 12 men went to spy on Canaan, 10 were bad and 2 were good. Hey, who was the majority? The 10. And were they right? No, they were very wrong. And And they came back and discouraged the hearts of the people of Israel. And God said, everybody over 20 years old is going to die. Wander for 40 years in the wilderness, 1 year for each day you spied out the land. And it's a tragic story. But you know, when you're in a world where the majority that are wrong are hurting the minority, like in America today, don't fret. As a child of God, everything's going to be okay. Remember this, after 40 years, but now the two spies who stood for right, Joshua and Caleb, they said, let's go on in. We can win this thing. We've got God. But the 10 discouraged the multitude. All those people died. And even Moses and Aaron died, and for different reasons. But the only two old guys that crossed the river was Joshua and Caleb. And Joshua crossed the river as the captain of the Lord's army. And Caleb, after a lot of the battle was being won there in Canaan, Caleb came to Joshua and said, hey, I want that mountain. God said I could have it. I want it. And you know what's great is you stand for God in the minority. God will take care of you. Now, it might take a while because you're surrounded by a bunch of crazies, but everything's okay. You can trust God. And the majority certainly should not be the ones that we lean on. Think about the Garden of Eden. I was going to say there's Noah. No, Noah wasn't in the Garden of Eden. Adam was in the garden. Eve was in the garden. God was in the garden. 2 out of 3 voted to eat the forbidden fruit. And if you want to throw the devil in, then 3 out of the 4 voted the fruit was okay. And obviously the majority was wrong. There's a story over in 1 Samuel 14, verse 6. Jonathan and his armor bearer, the Philistines were giving the Israelites a bunch of trouble. And most of the army's hanging out with Saul pouting. Jonathan and his armor bearer, they got looking around and said, up on this hillside, up on the top of that hill, there's some Philistines. Let's just go. And Jonathan said, there's no limit to who God can save by many or by few. Let's just go see if God will work. And they climbed. It was so steep, they had to use their hands and feet to climb up this. It wasn't just a trail, it was steep. And they climb up between these rocks. They get up there, and God did a miracle. And God stepped in and helped them. And the few conquered the many. And in Israel's army, the few, Jonathan and his armor bearer, were right. And the majority were hanging out with Saul. And look, this thing, the majority not always right. You take this book and you stand for God and you stand for the Word of God and you stand for the God of the Word, and you're right. Somebody said God and you are a majority. No, that's really semantics wrong. Majority means more. God and you together are right no matter what the rest of the world says. God and you can win no matter what the rest of the world says. But this thing of God knowing what's right, knowing what's wrong. Let me just read a verse here. 2 Chronicles 20:15. Be not afraid nor dismayed by reason of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's. Don't be afraid of the multitude. And let's fear God. I love the motto of the Missouri, the battleship, the Missouri. It's there as a museum display, however they call it, in Pearl Harbor. And the Mighty Mo, the Mighty Missouri, is a great battleship. And the first time I was on there many years ago, I picked up one of their, like a little patch you'd put on your coat arm or something. And it was a patch of the flag that the Missouri would fly. And it says, dread not, but God. And then a picture of a picture of the ship in the middle of it. But I love that. Dread not, but God. And I thought, man, that is so great. Well, I had a chance to go back to Hawaii with my son, Josiah, some years later. And I thought, we wanted to go on that. So we went, and I said, I want to get him one of those patches. And we went to the gift shop, and they'd changed all those patches. And that was the official flag, it was something official from the Missouri. I want to say it was the flag that flew on the Missouri. But whatever it was the old official. Well, now I found the exact same patch, and it said, dread not. And they took out, but God. And I thought, this world, the cancel culture cancels you on social media if they don't like you. The cancel culture tries to get everybody to boycott your products, boycott your store, and the cancel culture cancels God out. And I asked the girl that was working there, she said, can I help you? I said, I want one of these patches, one of the original ones. She said, well, these are. I said, no, I want the one that's like the flag that flew. She said, this is the one. I said, no, it's not. I was trying to be polite. She's just a young kid. She doesn't know. And college age maybe. And I told her the story, what I got when I was there before. She said, really? And so I started digging through. As those long poles that stick out and they stack them up with a little hole in the top of the packaging. I went all the way to the back and I found one that said, dread not, but God. And I got that out and I showed it to her. I said, this is the original. She said, whoa. And, this world's such a mess. The majority obviously felt like, but God was going to offend somebody. And I'm so weary of people being offended. We ought to do right. We ought to be offended by wrong. That ought to offend us. And don't let the majority. We're not in the days of lynch mobs where people would carry out and drag you out and without a trial or anything and hang you on the street. But we're certainly in the day of cyber lynch mobs, and we're in the day of gossip lynch mobs. But you know what? Whatever the multitude says, choosing right is always right. And just don't fret. And by the way, our kids need to hear this stuff. We need to make sure our young people grow up knowing right is right, no matter what anybody else thinks.